And then I would like to welcome you, John Conyers III, into our screening room. My name is Stephen Grady Muhammad, and I am the host for this screening event. We do have our, this is the Legacy Committee for Unified Leadership to identify a consensus candidate for the 13th Congressional District seat. I would like to introduce to you our screening committee. First of all, I'll start with Mr. Rick Pruce, who is with the Organized Labor from IBEW.
Good morning, good afternoon.
I would also like to introduce Mr. Lutalo Sanifu from the Black Slate.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
I would like to also introduce very hardworking young man from the community at large, Mr. Brian Banks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Brian Banks, JD.
I would also like to introduce from our organized labor community, a young and upcoming leader in the community, Ms. Micaiah Aaron.
Good morning, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
And I would also like to introduce from the Fannie Lou Hamer PAC, who is sitting in her car, but not sitting next to me in my car, our newly minted Dr. Yvette McElroy Anderson.
Absolutely. Pleasure to meet you.
Doctor, I need you to unmute yourself.
Oh, there, John. Good to see you.
Stephen.
Well,
And then last but not least, our esteemed business guru, Mr. Marvin Beatty.
Hello there.
hello. How are
John,
you?
good to see you, man. Fine, thank you.
And as I'm on my phone, I hope I did not miss anyone. I think that I have gotten everyone. I would like to turn the comm over to Brian Banks.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Conyers, for joining us today. We're going to ask you a series of questions just to learn more about you and your campaign. And then we're going to allow you for an opportunity to have a closing statement at the end. So we're going to begin our questions with Mr. Beatty with question number 1.
Thank you, Brian. And again, welcome, John. Good afternoon. My question is, please tell us, first of all, tell us who you are, and then tell us why you are running for the congressional seat in the 13th District.
Well, I'm John Conyers III, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, on the west side. Why am I running for the 13th? Why am I running for office in the 13th? I think that Detroit needs youthful leadership. I think we need leadership that has a heart for all people. And we need leadership that votes with our best interests in mind. I think we need someone that can not only that, I should say this, I think we need someone that can bridge the gap, generational gaps. Part of why I came home was, you know, as I was considering whether or not to run, and talking to my friends from a certain age demographic of our population in Detroit. They feel left out of the process. They feel unheard. They don't feel seen. And in many ways, given, you know, my family's history, I'm their only connection to politics. And then I took that and I started thinking about my own personal experience, being the child of a felon, and thinking about, you know, someone that lacked the resources that I lacked, but, you know, someone that lacked the opportunities that I was afforded when my mom went to prison, and how much that affects them, you know, how much that is not, you know, that's not talked about on a national level. And just knowing my experience, how much harder it would be for someone whose parents are not, you know, how difficult my experience was, how much harder that would be for someone who doesn't have a father who's a congressman. You know, that those types of things are you know, why I chose to run. But beyond that, I also think we need leadership that understands what goes on in Washington. You know, a lot of the pushback I get is, you know, you've never held elected office. You can't just run on your father's name. And that in no way is, you know, my intent. You know, I know a lot of people may not like the way my father chose to show me how the job is done, but I literally apprenticed under my father and fostered amazing relationships on the Hill currently. Part of why I'm in Los Angeles right now. I left yesterday morning, and I'll be here until tomorrow morning at 5, is to talk with Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And, you know, obviously seek her advice. She's helping me fundraise. You know, being able to text, being able to text, you know, Secretary Marcia Fudge on a personal level, but, you know, realizing that I can avail the relationships that I have built on my own, independent of my father, and avail those to the city of Detroit. I realize how important that is. And we need someone who can go to Washington and really get stuff done and knows their way around. So yeah.
So, John, just kind of follow-up question. I do want you to, if you would, just take a minute and talk about John Conyers III. Who are you? Everybody doesn't know you, but you need to describe who John Conyers III is. And then you know, the other part of the answer you answered very eloquently, but the first part you left out. And
Yeah.
I think everybody deserves to hear who you are.
Well, I guess that is that I left it out kind of describes me to a T. I'm not a person, you know, I'm not a person who likes to talk about myself. I try as much as possible, you know, in me apprenticing from my father, you know, staying out of the light, making sure I'm focused on what I need to do. And so obviously, like I said, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Excuse me, 1 second. My brother's coming back into my apartment. So yeah, you know, I graduated from Renaissance High School, went to Morehouse College. As I mentioned before, you know, when my mother went to prison, I had to leave college to come home and be there for my little brother. And so, you know, coming home, I'm a person that is, you know, puts family first, puts people first. I try to help as much as I possibly can. You know, I worked in the music business for a time, and then, you know, I transitioned into finance. And from there, I co-founded the first minority-owned hedge fund in Detroit's history. And in, you know, June of, well, I guess that's 2021, I left that firm and I co-founded a venture capital firm with some friends of mine. And so that's what I'm working on, bringing to the city of Detroit, venture capital firm that is focused, well, it's managed by Black men, and it is focused on investing in minorities, you know, Black, Latinx, and female entrepreneurs. I have a heart for business. I have a heart for people. And as much as possible, whenever I can, I try to avail, again, like I said, I try to avail the relationships that I have been afforded, the rooms that I've been able to be in and experience and fortunate and blessed enough to take part in. I try to avail that to as many people as possible, and show them, one, that, you know, it's attainable, but also, you know, that I'm happy to bring you along, because, you know, if we're not in it together, then, you know, it's no point.
Great. Thank you.
That wasn't as eloquent as I would have liked. I just have a I'm sorry, I have a difficult time talking about myself.
That's okay.
It's not my best quality.
That's all
You did fine. You can use your elocution on the rest of the questions. And I have the next question. Are there any outstanding credit issues, judgments, civil actions arising or could potentially arise, or is there anything in your background that could damage the campaign?
As it relates to damaging the campaign, not that I'm aware of, aside from, you know, I had an incident here in Los Angeles back in 2017. I was accused of something that I absolutely did not do. It was an unfortunate situation. And, you know, when asked about it, I am very honest about what happened that night. You know, at this juncture, having talked about it ad nauseum when it first happened and in detail when it first happened, and, you know, people having read what they read, people kind of make their judgments. But yeah, that would be the breadth of the things that could be found about me.
Anyone have a follow-up question related to this question?
Can you explain the incident you're speaking of? I'm not aware of that incident you're just.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2017, my ex-girlfriend accused me of stabbing her. She accused me of domestic violence. In this incident, we got into an argument. She pulled a knife on me, and having the spoon here, I can demonstrate exactly what happened. I have a table here. She pulled a knife on me. The knife was down this way, like this. In her apartment, there is a, you can imagine a stop sign. And so it's not like perfectly right angles. It's like angles that are flat. She was chasing me around. Excuse me, Lulu, can you sit down? She was chasing me around with the knife around her apartment, around her, I guess, what is this, coffee table. And in me slowing down, I turned, grabbed her arms, pinned them against the wall. This is her right hand. It's my right hand. I reached, took it out. So now if you are her and it's now, I take it out of her hand, it's like this. I take a step back and she kept swinging on me. And like just my reflexes, like it cut her right here in the arm. And that is the gist of everything that happened. And that night, I went to jail that night. The district attorney declined to press charges because of insufficient evidence. And also just, there are a ton of things going on that night. But yeah, that is the gist of it.
I have another follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
And not related to that incident at all. You have a background with hedge funds and venture capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of campaign finance,
Mm-hmm.
will there be any issues related to your campaign? Will there be questions? Are you concerned that there may be questions related to campaign finance?
When you say campaign finance, can you be a little more specific? Can you elaborate upon that? I'm not clear on what you mean by that.
My question is more directed towards, do you feel that people will think that you are leveraging relationships and in your hedge fund background and venture capitalism in a way that may or may not be appropriate?
Not that I'm aware of. I think that there's a two parts to that answer. So to my answer to that question. So number one, part of why I got out of that space was because to speak to the lack of, equitable opportunity. And that's one of the things I campaigned on last time. Equity of opportunity is critical. And so part of me leaving the finance space is being able to see firsthand, and not only venture capital, but in at a hedge fund, how things are and how things operate and how people talk to one another, and how much people that look like the people on this panel are not set up for success in that. And number two, beyond that, I think that if you're a citizen of the United States, you have a right to, if you support a candidate, you have a right to support a candidate. With that being said, much like my father, I'm gonna be very frank. I don't give a damn what your background is, what you work. I have a heart for the people. I'm not gonna do I can't be bought. So if that is implicit in the question, no, I don't have a problem with anyone. And I've told people that have donated to my campaign already. I just know, this is not. I don't do transactional relationships in that way.
Thank you.
So I have the third question.
Yes, ma'am.
And the question is, what is your commitment to the Black community, and what legislation will you introduce to advance those issues, and how will you get it passed and bring resources back to the district?
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you asked. Oh, man, I'm so glad you asked. There are a number of things, that I care about greatly. So I'm going to answer that question kind of in reverse, right? So how will I get it passed? How will I be effective as a legislator? Again, people didn't like the way that my father kind of brought me up in this space and not urging me to go run for another seat, but rather having me at his, on his hip and writing committee questions, doing those things. I understand fundamentally how my father was able to do all the things he was able to do, which starts with grassroots. Part of the grassroots piece of that is like, we know, you all know, John Conyers was everybody's congressman, not just Detroit's congressman, because he would go everywhere, and any movement that was on the ground, he would be there standing arm in arms with the people. So that's number one. But number two, being able, again, the relationships that you have already on the Hill matter, right? Those things matter. And so part of that is having people like a Debbie Dingle, who's like my godmother, Maxine Waters, Sheila Jackson Lee, having these people that are already championing me privately, but then also having them as further mentors to kind of, help me whip up support and get those co-sponsors for the bill. That is how I plan to go about it. But the number one thing is having the support of grassroots organizations. That is the most important point, or one of the most important parts of being able to create momentum around your legislation. As it relates to particular pieces of legislation, I think let's just take Detroit, for example. Well, go to that one second. I'll go to my first one that's really, really a priority to me, and then I'll go to my one that is very, very Detroit specific, right? So, and it speaks to a relationship that I already have. But disability, right? Disability, first of all, I have major depressive disorder, right? And that it's covered by disability. But one of the things that to me is shocking, especially with inflation, right? Given inflation, is that with disability, I don't know how many of you all know, but with disability, the income caps are $2,000 a year. Most people don't get that. And beyond that, you can only have as much as $2,000 in your bank account at any given time, or your disability benefits will be reassessed and they could be lowered. And then beyond that, you can only make $1,350 outside of what you get cumulatively in disability. So if you completely max out with everything, that's capped at $25,350 annual. That's not livable. That is not right. And that's something that absolutely needs to be fixed. And as it relates to Congress, there are only 2 people in the disability caucus right now. So that is something that I plan to champion and speak to, because I know how many of the citizens of Detroit and in the 13th are on disability. So let's go back to relationally being able to be effective as a legislator and being able to really drill down on an issue and try to get things done. So let's talk about affordable housing. A lot of times when people speak to affordable housing, they are speaking to housing projects, housing developments, or government housing. In this case, when I speak to affordable housing, I speak to things that is important, but I'm also speaking to people like in the city of Detroit that are already homeowners. And part of affordable housing and being able to maintain your home and I should say the maintenance of your home is being able to get banks to come and engage with people and with other companies, right? So one of the problems that's in Detroit is not being able to unlock the capital that you already have in your home, because you've spent X amount of dollars, but the bank is saying it's only appraising for this. So that really locks out homeowners from being able to grow their wealth, because so much of our wealth is tied up, in our home. So if all you have is this asset that is it's not a liquid asset, you don't have access to a home equity line of credit, you don't have access to a home equity loan that is at market rate, it's depressed because of where you live. That's something that I can work directly with someone like Marsha Fudge to rectify, right? And really build out and try to help the citizens of Detroit and really work with making banks do what they're supposed to do. So there's just a few things that are that I can think of in general. Those are top priorities.
So also, I have the fourth question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
I was gonna say in general, like loan processes, right? So that one thing, this is a point I forgot to make. Not Congresswoman, she's no longer a Congresswoman. Secretary Fudge, through her position at HUD, she can speak to and work with banks to modify how we process loans, right? So having the government waive things like closing costs, down payment assistance. Those are things that we can really work with or I, in my capacity as congressman, can really work with someone like a Marshall Fudge to rectify and work with to get, especially millennials. We're trying to buy homes. We're trying to start families, right? I was just on the what was the panel the other day? Reparations panel with Councilwoman Sheffield. And that was something another one of my millennial peers was speaking to, is like, I would like to buy a house. I would like to buy a family, but start a family, but it's just not affordable. So being able to work with someone like, you know, in collaboration with Secretary Fudge, and then bringing those initiatives to the Hill, because it affects places like Los Angeles. It affects places, you know, like Oakland. It affects places in Chicago, right? It affects all these places. So it's something that is not just Detroit based. It's something that is across the nation. And that's something that I know that people can get behind.
Thank you. I have the fourth question, and it's actually a great segue from what you were just speaking of. And the fourth question is, given that committee assignments are based on a member's wishes, party needs, vacancies, the region, personalities, and caucus connections, please share what your committee assignment requests will be, the basis of those requests, and your strategy to obtain the assignments.
Committee assignments, as of now, I'm thinking judiciary, much like my father, and financial services. Those are two committees that really, obviously, I mean, for me, I have a heart for the law. It's something that at some point I would like to go to law school. It's definitely on my wish list or my agenda. And so just being able to I mean, that is one of the most powerful committees in all of Washington, right? In all of Congress. So either Judiciary or House Financial Services Committee. And obviously, like the reason why I'm in Los Angeles this weekend, my mentor and very close friend, family friend, is currently chairman of that committee, Maxine Waters. And then Sheila Jackson Lee, being able to lean on her to speak to Judiciary, as well as, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name? He and my dad were such great. Jerry Nadler, who I speak with occasionally, being able to talk to him, and who I've spoken with on the Hill many times, being able to speak to him about judiciary and kind of work through things on those committees. Those two committees interest me the most. Yeah. And financial services, more than anything, I would say, probably because of the things I already spoke about, right, as it relates to banking and how we control banks, and how, I should say, how we regulate banks, and hold them accountable. That's something that, like, being able to speak to the numbers in Black home ownership and home ownership in our district and things like that, being able to apply pressure on banks is really, really important. And again, that is why I left the financial services space, because I saw how things moved, I saw how things operated, and I didn't like it. You know, it's almost, what do they call it? You know, be careful what you wish for. It's something that I was a lifelong dream of mine. To, like, when I was a kid, I wasn't the best with math, but I still wanted to be a hedge fund manager. Ended up being a partner, but on the business development side, because of my social skills and my relationships. And after seeing how the sausage is made, I understand better than most, how things happen in that world, and that we need to rein some of those things in.
All right, I think I have the next question if there's no follow-up.
No follow-up.
What's the weather like there, Mr. Conyers? What's good morning to you there, and good afternoon to us here in Detroit. It's 30 degrees here.
You know, the weather is.
Can you bring the sunshine back with you when you come back?
Yes, I will do my best. I will absolutely do my best. No, the weather is great. Weather is great. I'm excited to be going to, the Congresswoman and I are going to a Black History Month event in her district. But the weather is great. Yeah.
Good. And go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that it's interesting to see that, I'm going to be asking you the same question I asked 4 years ago to you. So this should be an easy one for you. and this is kind of the midpoint of our conversation and our discussion and questions. How many congressional standing committees are there? And please name 10 congressional standing committees.
You did ask me this. There are, I should know this. I believe 19 or 20, something to that effect. And what was the second part of the question?
The second part, name 10.
Oh.
And you already named a few. You just named a few. So again,
judiciary, financial services, foreign service. I mean, not foreign. It's Adam Schiff's committee, because it's a committee that is of some interest to me. Oh man.
You had the first part of that.
House committee on, is it House Committee on Foreign? I forget off the top of my head.
Okay, we'll accept that. Go ahead to the next one.
Yeah, we'll take that. Foreign affairs.
But it's not that, and I don't like that. I don't know that. But yeah, I think there are 19 or 20 standing committees, and yeah, I should know this, but I generally tend to focus on the things that, like, where my interests kind of lie, and what the scope of those things are, and roles and responsibilities of those things. So forgive me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Next question. Individually specify current issues that the communities and cities in the 13th district are dealing with, and how would you address those conflicting community views and issues?
Well, I think for me, what's the best way to answer this? I think inflation is obviously one. And inflation is a major one. And I think education is another one. I think from my perspective, again, looking at how we're, funding schools, I think that's something that needs to be reassessed as it relates to the conflicting things that are conflicting within the communities of the 13th. I've never been the most familiar with Grosse Pointe, so I can't really speak to that. And right now I'm getting my, feet wet in learning about the issues in Grosse Pointe and some of the issues in Lincoln Park, and, other municipalities in the district. So forgive me if I don't have a very in-depth answer for that. But for me, when I assess the landscape, inflation is something that I think affects everyone in the district. And that's something that for me, you can unify people around how you plan to address that, and creating a path forward and a plan forward for that.
Okay, any follow-up?
I have a follow-up, yes. So what conflicting priorities are there between municipalities or cities that are in the district that you could address and maybe have them coalesce around?
I'm not sure what the conflicting issues are in the municipalities.
All right, thank you.
I think I would say that, not that those things are not important, but as a candidate for United States Congress, one, being knowledgeable on issues is important, but beyond that, speaking to things that everyone can kind of get behind, and be supportive of, and trying to unify and find common ground, is kind of where my focus is, more so than like looking at conflict and parsing things out from there. I try as much as possible to look for, like, okay, where are the similarities? What are the things that can unify people? And then once you have common ground, then it's easier to address conflict. And so that's kind of how I've tried to deal with things. And as I go door to door, which I've already started doing, just kind of talking to folks in that way.
My follow-up, and it's quickly, it's going to be quick. How many communities are in the 13th district?
I have a list. I don't have it memorized, but I have a list. I
You
know
know
it's
the
all,
total?
huh?
You know
No,
the
I don't have,
total?
I mean, I don't have that memorized. I have a list so that that's not something that I would commit to memory personally. I have a list, and I look at it often. I mean, I can name them off the top of my head. I don't know all the points names, but it's I can just start for you without looking. Grosse Pointe Farms, Grosse Pointe Shores, Highland Park, Hamtramck, Detroit, Taylor, Romulus, Allen Park, Lincoln Park, Ecorse, right? River Rouge, Wyandotte. Is Melvindale in there? Am I missing one? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
River Rouge, Allen Park. Southgate, and Wayne.
Okay.
Did I miss any? Harper Woods. I missed Harper Woods. Is that all the points? Is there another point I missed?
There were a couple points that you missed.
Okay.
All right. We'll move to the next question, Yvette.
Okay, so the next question is, what do you want to accomplish in your first 12 months in Congress? Give an example of how you think you can achieve that goal.
What do I want to accomplish in my first 12 months in Congress? I would really like to this is a tough question to answer because there are things that I'll stay away from that part. I think what I would want to focus on, like I said, is the housing piece, getting legislation drafted around housing and disability. I have great policy folks. On my campaign staff, and then there are folks that I've already talked to that used to work on my dad's staff that help craft legislation that I've talked to that are kind of showing me things, teaching me about things, and talking to me about certain things on the Hill and how to move things along from a policy standpoint and getting them in front of getting co-sponsors and things like that. But I think getting legislation to kind of address, not kind of getting drafting legislation, introducing legislation to address disability and the income caps is something that is a top priority to me. And then getting legislation drafted to address affordable housing is also a priority to me. Those two things are of the utmost importance. And I think third in that, I think when we look, because this job is not just a local job, it is a national job, and there are geopolitical implications. Part of, people are talking about Ukraine, right? And this Russia conflict. Another thing that's really, really important to me that our last congressperson did not support, which is perplexing to me, is Build Back Better. And now we have to do it in parts. But one of the things that her and the Republicans don't understand is we're not able to go to the full scope of our sanctions and retaliate to the fullest extent, save for a violent act. We're not able to max out on our passive acts because we are so tied to oil and gas, right? These sanctions and the global economy are so deeply intertwined. And if we had if we had legislation that would incentivize businesses to transition to renewable energy sources, right? In the same way that we did with the original New Deal. And when we built out roads, when we were building roads, our partners, our NATO allies and NATO partners would not be feeling the large effects that they're going to feel once these sanctions are imposed, and we're going to feel once these sanctions are imposed with the elevation of natural gas, the prices of gas and crude oil, because we are so reliant on these fossil fuels. It is. My dad used to say everything is connected. in this Russia, this Russo-Ukraine war is an example of that. How, sure, we're not going to put boots on the ground, but what is going to happen because of our reliance and our refusal to move forward and move into the future is that we are still feeling the effects socially and the implications socially of not transitioning to renewables, because our partners are reliant, and for them to make that choice, that does not create political goodwill. We see, and we've already seen and heard how people feel about Joe Biden, because he's had to say, hey, gas prices are going to go up, but this is the price of defending democracy. But it wouldn't be the price of defending democracy if we would focus on transitioning to renewables.
All right, so I think that's a perfect segue, Mr. Conyers, to our next question.
Absolutely.
Can you name at least 5 top issues facing Congress today? If you could just name us 5 issues facing Congress today.
Top issues, I think, obviously, Build Back Better. Build Back Better is a key piece. It's always the budget. Every time there's Congress, they're never passing. To me, that is something that is a major issue, and I wonder why we continue to do this. It wasn't a thing before. The deficit, right? Passing a new budget. It's something that, like, Congress has the ability to pass a long-term budget, but they refuse to. And I don't understand it. I genuinely, I just can't. I can't understand it.
So that's 2. Can you give us 3 more top issues?
National defense is something that is obviously in Congress. Defense, talk about infrastructure. Oh, this is one I was just talking about the other day. Treasury, post office, those things. I think for me, talk about the post office and their pension, right? How they're the only entity in America that has to fund their pension 75 years out, right? I think that is something that, and it's always contentious on the conservative versus liberal side, or the left or the right. That's always a contentious point.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to our next question from Ms. Aaron.
The next question is,
sorry.
please.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because you mentioned Ukraine, but when we got to this question about issues facing Congress today, I'm a little surprised that Ukraine didn't come up. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your position is on how we should be handling what's going on in Ukraine? Should we be supportive of the president? Do you think that there's another approach that may be better?
Well, yes, I think we should be supportive of the president. I think as it relates to Ukraine, again, what's the best way to kind of address this question in its totality? So I think as it relates to being supportive of the president, let's just start there. I think it is unconscionable that we have a Congress that, aside from the Democrats, the Republicans are even torn on whether or not we should be supportive of the president, right? I think on the world stage, America takes the lead, and it's important that we, as a federal government, we have a unified front. As it relates to how the president is handling it, I think he's doing the best he can with what he has, right? Again, to my point about how everything is connected. You know, our NATO allies, there's only so much we can do. Even kicking when we were talking about kicking Russia out of SWIFT, right, which is the internet, how, you know, money is transferred around the world from in the international banking system. Those things have great impacts, right? Not because of the things that we have not done. Russian oligarchs around the world, not just in America, but it's a core part of the business in the UK, right? They are entrenched into so many things, in so many components of business in the United Kingdom. And one of them even owns one of the biggest soccer clubs, Chelsea, right? So it is imposing those sanctions on Russia and Russians has consequences that ripple out very, very far. And so with Ukraine not being a member state of NATO, there is nothing that we should be doing besides what we are doing. And it is important that we do not, because of Vladimir Putin's temperament, it is important that we do not escalate this to an actual conflict, a violent conflict with that spills over beyond Russia and Ukraine. I think, Vladimir Putin, based on the lens through which he views history, he views Ukraine as, a critical part or as a part of Russia, as something that's born out of the former Soviet Union. And that's absolutely, just historically, it's not true, right? But when you're dealing with someone who likens himself to Peter the Great, it's important, and that is how he would like to be remembered. That's one of the biggest talking points about Putin right now, is that now that he's up in age, he's reflecting, and his decisions, he's reflecting on how he will be remembered, and his decisions are being made from that lens. And so it is important for America more than anyone else to be measured, especially in how we handle this conflict, when we know we have the same situation with the country that we do have a military obligation to in Taiwan. And China views Taiwan the same way that Russia views the Ukraine. So it's important that we have someone in office that is measured in how he goes about this. And so the way in which the president has handled it to this point, I'm supportive of. There's not really much he could do, because Vladimir Putin has had his mind made up for a while.
Thank you. Sorry, Micaiah.
Oh, no problem. I have question number 9, which is, please share what your fundraising plan is, including your fundraising goal and how much money you have raised thus far.
So I've hired a fundraiser, a couple. My fundraising plan, so I don't plan to announce until another 2 weeks from now. My fundraising goal is $800K. I know there's $1 million and $1.5 million race, but my entry into the race is later on purpose to make a stronger push. Instead of trying to make this a marathon, making it a half marathon for myself, making a shorter push, and being very, very strategic in how I use dollars. To this point, I've self-funded to the tune of $30,000 and raised. I've only sent the link to friends and family. So my friends and family have altogether donated like $10,000. So altogether, my campaign has $40,000 right now. But after the first filing, even before then, I'll be just fine. I've already talked to. Pardon, go ahead.
As a follow-up question, will you be outsourcing all of your financing, all of your fundraising, as well as your committee finance report mandates? Will you outsource all of that stuff?
As opposed to
handling, having a staff.
Having me do it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not typical for a candidate to do those things himself. From what I saw and what I know from the people that I know that have won, hiring a fundraiser is very common. I have an external comms team. I have the only person that is kind of, you could say, commingled. Maybe this answers your question, Lutalo. My business manager he makes sure that all of my bills are paid. He's also my treasurer for this, just because he does my taxes. And so being a campaign treasurer is basically you do all the taxes, or do all the filings which equate to taxes, do all the filings for the campaign. And so I didn't trust anybody else other than him. And the last time I did this, I trusted my cousin, who was an accountant, and he just wasn't timely. And for me, being timely is very, very important. And so I have a campaign compliance person, Stan Brand, he was my father's campaign compliance person. So yeah, as far as the fundraising plan, again, like I said, I have members of Congress that have committed to helping me raise money once my website goes up, which that hasn't even gone up yet. Like I said, my announcement's coming mid-March. And I've really just been, focused on my signatures, getting messaging together and really engaging with the community. And so fundraisers here in Los Angeles, fundraisers in New York are set up. I have fundraisers in Atlanta set up. And then also have fundraisers in Miami set up, and Houston as well. So I'm not really worried about, this first report. whoever has raised the most. I know Sri, looking at the numbers, already has $2 million in disbursements. Not really concerned about this first disclosure it's due on the 31st. Books close on the 31st, is due April 15th. Not really worried about that. I'm more concerned with raising capital, making that push from April to June. Obviously for mailers, when absentees go out on June 18th, and then that lead up to August 2nd. Those are my concerns and how my fundraising picture is kind of mapped out. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Thank you so much. Our next question, Mr. Beatty. Mr. Beatty? I'll go ahead and ask the last question. Why should this? Oh, okay,
I'm sorry, Brian. Why should this committee consider giving you the endorsement?
I mean, as it relates to, well, it depends on what the committee values, and I'm not sure what that is. I think when I think through,
let me tell you what it is. Our goal is to identify a electable candidate that is an African American. That's what we are. A unified candidate that is an African American. That's our goal.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I understood that part. I knew that part, but I mean, what is the committee value in a candidate? So I mean, if of the people that are there, of the people that are candidates, I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. Obviously, I'm running, so I think I am the best candidate. So I don't know. What their capacity is to bring bigger egos together, right? I don't know how they unify people that are already substantial in their field, right? Being able to get them to coalesce behind them. I don't know what their relationship and coalition building is like. I'm not sure what that is like, but Washington D.C. is built on that. It's built on being able to build a coalition amongst your peers and people older than you. It's built on relationships, and it's built on being able to call not just a representative, but call someone and get information, at HUD, at DOJ, in the Pentagon. It's built on those things. And if you want someone who knows, one, how to build a coalition on the ground, on the grassroots level, if you want someone that knows how to and can come in with mentorships and guidance already built in, and someone that's willing, people that are ready to wrap their arms around someone and get them where they need to be in their capacity as congressperson. And then also someone that just has a heart for the job, that knows the job, the ins and outs of the job, the hours that it takes, the time you have to spend, the time you have to give, the time you have to be away from your family, someone that cares. People look at me as just, well, that's just John Conyers' son. What has he done? Like I said at the beginning of this call, I'm not a person who likes to talk about all that I've done. I like to fly under the radar. I like to, stay out of the limelight and mind my business. But mental, if you're talking about the issues, whether that's mental health, I understand, as a child of a felon, I understand what that is like. Not to the degree of someone whose parents weren't politicians, but I understand having to sacrifice for my family. Those are the people that, when I go to office, that's what I'm thinking about, because I know how hard it was for me. So I can only imagine how hard it was for someone who didn't have my circumstance, right? If you want someone, that, again, like I said, has a heart for Detroit, born and raised in Detroit, loves Detroit, eats, breathes, sleeps Detroit, and is going to put every ounce of their and fiber of their being into being the best candidate and being the best representative and representing this city proudly, and that understands the issues, right? Understands the issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask, as Mr. Beatty has spoken, we're looking for a consensus candidate, someone that we can put all of our weight behind: labor unions, the faith base, our grassroots organization, our business community. And so if you were not selected as our consensus candidate, would you be willing to get behind the consensus candidate?
No.
Okay. Thank you for your transparency. Any further follow-up questions before I ask for a closing statement from Mr. Conyers? All right, well, we have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
I don't really have a closing statement besides, the things I already said. And obviously, I think one thing that I didn't touch on is that, I don't know how long the mayor is going to be the mayor, but whether it's, Mike Duggan or someone else, beyond a great representative in Congress that brings the money home and represents the district well and gets it right on the issues, we need someone that, can assist the mayor in terms of like with that national profile and what comes with that, being able to incentivize folks to, bring businesses to the city of Detroit and invest in the city of Detroit. And so some of the, like when I think about my candidacy, the reason why I'm saying I wouldn't be willing to get out is that people like Donahue Peebles, who spoke at my father's funeral, wrote in his book how, that my father saved his life and now is the largest Black landowner in America. Having someone like that, when I think about why I'm getting into this race, one of the reasons is like having someone like that is within your network, being able to bring them back to where they're from, being being Detroit, Michigan, and expose young people to like, hey, he's from here. I know Donahue doesn't come home that much, but he's from here. Being able to create internships and creating a public-private partnership with the city, with someone like, with Mayor Duggan, being able to put a Black face as it relates to business that has the power, that has the history and the track record of being able to do successful business. Those are the types of things that I think when I think about my candidacy and ultimately winning this race, those are the types of things and ways that I want to be able to impact this district. It's not just about the legislative piece. It's about all the resources and the people that become available to you once you have that seat and how you can leverage those things on behalf of the people.
Well, thank you greatly. We would like to thank you for taking the time to screen with us on this Saturday. I know it's a time difference, and I know you shared with me that you did have another appointment, so I did want to honor that and get you out in enough time. So we thank you for taking the time to screen. We will be sharing all of the videos with our full body and making a decision within the next week or so.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
All right, you guys have a good one.
Thank you, John.